Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning. Look, we're very proud, we're very pleased, and I think all credit to Nigel Farage and Reform. Look, people often have a perception that what all politicians do is talk about things. This was hard action. Make no mistake, the reason why Keir Starmer's government have thrown in the towel and said, yes, fine, we will begrudgingly, kicking and screaming, allow over 4 million people to have their vote is because yesterday was the deadline by which point the government was supposed to have filed its defence to the judicial review court hearing, which is about to begin in 2 days' time. And there's nothing about this that was ever remotely acceptable. It was unprecedented in the history of this country for elections to be cancelled for millions of people 2 years running. So everything you just heard there about reorganisation, one might be able to construct something of an argument for that 1 year. To do it twice never happened before without primary legislation, i.e. without MPs accountable to their electorates going and voting something through. And I also want to point out that the letter where they announced this, that they were throwing in the towel and conceding that the elections can go ahead, said that this was in light of, quote, new evidence. And they've preserved their privilege on that, meaning that they're not going to publish it. I think it's in the public interest for us all to see it. I think I know what that new legal advice, rather, was going to be. It was that they were going to lose. It's a great day, I would say, for the country. Look, we don't have a written constitution in this country. There's a lot of things that people listening to this program might take for granted that they shouldn't. And look, clearly, the primary motivation was to stymie Reform's momentum. The Telegraph ran a seat-by-seat analysis that suggested, it is only a poll, but still suggested north of 80% of the seats that they were attempting to cancel would have gone to Reform. But look, no matter whom you will vote for in May, if you're in these areas, we're very pleased to have done our part to restore democracy.
Mr. Yusuf, the JR, the judicial review that you put together, what was it going to say later this week? What would your evidence have been?
Well, the crux of the argument is that the legislation that the government was going to try to use, the Local Government Act of 2020, was simply could not be used in this fashion. That's a statutory instrument, and we were going to make the point that there is simply no precedent, as we talked about, for this to happen 2 years in a row. So candidly, we were more confident and thought we had a real, and we've said this consistently, we had a real shot of winning in the areas where they were cancelling them twice. And you may remember the Electoral Commission, hardly renowned friends of Nigel Farage and Reform, of course, but all credit to them, they came out with, I think, an extraordinary statement saying, look, we see absolutely no reason for these elections to be cancelled at all, and they should go ahead. So that would have been the crux of our judicial review. And I want to say one last thing. You know, your characterization of Keir Starmer as a highly diligent barrister, I detected a hint of sarcasm in your voice. But isn't this the man, remember, who's always telling us how important it is that the rights of foreign nationals are upheld? You know, any number of appalling and abhorrent things, frankly, including rapists from other countries their rights must be considered. They must be allowed to stay in this country at taxpayer expense, no matter what atrocities they commit. But when it comes to British people's rights, he's willing to trample them and take extraordinary action. And frankly, he's already the most unpopular prime minister on record. The one thing he is diligent, I would suppose, he is breaking records there. I would suggest his approval ratings will tumble further.
Last minute or so together, Mr. Yusuf, is it correct the costs are in the region of around £100,000 the government must pay to you?
I don't have that figure off the top of my head. I do know our lawyers have worked incredibly hard on this, and if ever there was money to be spent, as your reporter, as somebody on that segment just said, I think it's money well spent to hold this government to account.
And lastly, one newspaper, actually two newspapers, are saying that Nigel Farage will hand out some of the top jobs later today. Is that correct? And Robert Jenrick is going to be your Treasury spokesperson or Shadow Chancellor, whatever you want to call him?
He will be announcing some new members of the Shadow Cabinet. I'm not going to spoil it. You've only got a couple of hours to wait.
Zia Yusuf, thank you for your time. You're Head of Policy at Reform UK. I have great admiration for you because of the work you do in the field of disability, and I know you feel it very personally. You work very hard, but...
Thank you.
It is another day of humiliation for your government. Which is the most embarrassing U-turn? Pub taxes, farmers, waspy women, or local democracy, Minister?
Nick, this local government thing,
it's a shambles.
I agree. Look, I agree that when the legal advice changes, you've got to change your position. We pushed through reforms which were based on streamlining, making it more effective, making local government more transparent. Why do we need two chief executives in some areas? Why do we need two finance directors? It's just duplication and bureaucracy. We don't need it. So we've got to reform it. We pushed those reforms through. 30 local authorities came back to us and says, look, we're just really going to struggle to put these reforms through whilst also holding local elections. We listened to that. We said, OK, we're going to postpone in those 30 areas, including, by the way, I think 5 or 6 Conservative areas. There were Lib Dems, there were Greens, etc., but the majority Labour councils, but nevertheless a mixture. And we of course would only put that through on the basis of legal advice, which said that we could do so. That legal advice has now changed. That is not ideal. I'm not going to stand here and pretend to you that it is, but we're a government that works with the rule of law.
But it was challenged from day one, Minister. It was challenged from day one. Why did the government wait until the very last moment to announce that they would actually change position and the elections would go ahead? How humiliating does that look? How can you tell my listeners they can believe anything your government says? This is the 14th U-turn, Minister.
Well, we had legal advice which was on that basis we were able to push through these reforms, and that was what our focus is. It's about getting the best possible value for money for the British taxpayer at all times, and we want to act in their interest and ensure that you don't have unnecessary bureaucracy. I think most people in the country would support that. The legal advice changed because of the legal challenge that we received, and that we are where we are. We now have to move forward. We will continue with these reforms, and 2 to 3 years down the line, I think people will really see and feel the benefits of them.
But the country we have as a Prime Minister, a supposedly skilled barrister, whatever made him think he could change this? His judgment is shot through, isn't it, Minister? Whether it's waspy women, pub taxes, farmers, local elections, he cannot get anything right. Is this policy you've just announced very welcome for disabled people? Will that be reversed tomorrow afternoon?
No.
How can you say that? How should my listeners believe that?
Well, I'm standing here and telling you it won't be changed. We're bringing forward secondary legislation to increase the uplift very shortly. Look, I mean, if you take each of the examples where we've changed course, you mentioned farmers. Okay, a change was made on inheritance tax, but the fundamental principle that the people who were gaming the system and buying up vast swathes of land and weren't real farmers, they were just doing as a tax dodge, those people are now not going to benefit from that loophole. So the fundamental principle changes. Okay, you might change some of the detail along the way. Does that really constitute a U-turn? I'm not so sure. I think it constitutes a government that is listening, that is sticking to its principles, but changing some of the operational detail of what we're doing.
It's a government that's dithering. It seems to have no policy, and upon any challenge, it either backs down or tries to put through practices that are illegal.
Well, look,
that's true,
I accept.
When confronted by, apart from waspy women, the only people you haven't helped are waspy women having promised you would. When confronted by farmers or other people, you back down and you try and put policies in that are illegal. And I'm sorry to say that to you because you work bloody hard in the field of disability, in which I have an interest, but it's a bloody shambles, Mr. Kinnock, and you're a good enough bloke to realise it. Come on.
I accept that things have to change, Nick, and we've had some very big changes in Number 10, which I'm sure you will have followed in recent days and weeks. It means now really getting back to core Labour values of building an economy that works for everyone, having an industrial strategy that really protects our steel industry, ramping up our engagement with the European Union to get that growth and to have proper relationships with partners and allies in this dangerous and turbulent world in which we live. That is what we're going to see with this government going forward over the coming weeks and months. Sometimes things change and you need to change.
Do you need to change leader?
No. Keir Starmer is absolutely the right man to take us forward. I think we've seen over recent years.
Two hours before the U-turn, he was telling a radio station there will be no more U-turns. Less than 2 hours later, there was another U-turn.
Look, just think about the carousel of chaos that we had with the Tories,
what do you call
chopping
this,
and
Mr.
changing. Nick, this is about government taking
U-turning.
difficult decisions, and sometimes the conditions change. As I said to you on farmers, that I don't describe that as a U-turn. I describe that as changing the focus of a tax policy. But the principle of going after the people that need to be gone after is still absolutely there. And I think you'll see in each of these, okay, some of the operational detail may change, the position may change in terms of the detail, but the fundamental principles of what we are doing remain completely unchanged, and we stick to our guns.
Simon's in Stratford-upon-Avon. Your reaction, Simon. Good morning.
Good morning, Nick. Just wondering which clown is coming on at 10 to 8 this morning.
That would be the son of the former leader of the Labour Party, who's a decent bloke. That would be Stephen Kinnock.
Oh, well, I do hope you'll be a little bit tougher than you are from time to time with him. Let's be clear.
Sometimes
we
I
had
like
Chris
him, he's a
Bryant
friend.
on.
Yeah, ridiculous.
Well, yes, that might be the case, but
I know,
we had
he's
Chris
got-
Bryant on.
What do you want me to tell him? Give me a question. Come on, give me...
I'd just like to know if any announcement they make this week is actually going to be held the week after or the month after or even the year after, because it is a complete clown
And
show.
he'll say
And
that we're
credibility
bringing
is
down
shot.
NHS waiting lists and we've got the highest growth in the G7. That's what he'll say. I'm telling you now, Simon.
He can say that. I don't believe all of that. I don't believe. And the point about GDP in the G7, just ask yourself, is the GDP growth good enough?
No.
It's not whether we are better than anybody else.
Yep.
It is whether it is good enough.
Yeah.
They are there to make our lives better, not just continue to the U-turn.
Lastly, how do the government... It is the 14th U-turn. How do you imagine they look to you and other voters now when they go to the local elections? Do you think there'll be such a thing as a punishment vote?
I thought we had the adults back in the room.
I don't think we have at all. It's your reaction. Jane, you're on the radio. Good morning.
Morning, Nick. How are you?
Well, chastened by my son, but I'm okay. Go ahead. I'm not going to do movie lines again. I'm puzzled. They've got yet another one of this magnitude wrong, Jane. Are you?
A little bit. I mean, I'm not a Labour supporter by any stretch of the imagination. But what I do get increasingly frustrated with is different politicians pointing the finger and the yaboo politics. I think the point that we need to consider here is that, okay, you could argue that there was something maybe untoward going on with the cancellation of the local elections, but actually this was a choice by county councils whether they wanted to go ahead with the elections or not. It wasn't a mandatory thing. It was something where it was optional. So actually, you know, the government, I guess I'm just trying to look at it from all sides, but from their perspective, if they're trying to save millions of pounds, then, you know, this is an option that surely should have been put on the table. Now, the thing to remember with reform is that with Nigel Farage, there is obviously an advantage for him in terms of forcing the hand. So actually, he's not doing this great thing for the public. He's not helping us in any way. He's just trying to help himself. He's just basically trying to expedite.
Do you not think he's allowing people to vote? That he has helped restore democracy? Do you not think that is helping people?
There's an element of that you're allowing people to vote, but ultimately Nigel Farage is not going to do something unless it benefits Nigel Farage. So I think, you know, you've got to take it with that sort of pinch of salt as well. I mean, the other thing to point out is that the Liberal Democrats were apparently calling on Labour to scrap this idea of cancelling the elections. However, you know, there was councils of theirs, you know, was their majority, where they had equally asked to cancel the elections, and yet when there was a spokeslady that was on the radio LBC yesterday, and when the point was put to her, it was like, oh well, you know, they kind of had their reasons. It's this hypocrisy all the time. So I'm really concerned about, you know, what we're going to get in. I mean, currently, yes, Nick, it is a shambles. It is an absolute shambles. And, you know, Labour are not doing a good job of getting to grips. But do we honestly think that reform, and I'm sorry, I'm going off a topic here, but do we honestly think reform is going to do that? You know? Who
knows? Who knows? But all I would say is I really don't think anything could be more shambolic than the current mob. I just don't know. Jane, thank you. Be careful what you wish for is your basic message, and we'll have more on that in a moment. Pavan in Rugby. Pavan, how do you characterise it? He says it's listening to the electorate is what Mr Kinnock would tell us. Good morning.
Good morning, Nick. I'm afraid I have to agree with you. I mean, the deflection and attempt to introduce neologisms to try to explain that away. Credit to Mr Kinnock, by the way. I think he did a sterling effort.
He's a decent bloke and he works hard for disabled people, so he is to be admired, but not here. He's defending the indefensible, I think, Pavan.
Well, Nick, the biggest problem, I think, is the fact that this chap has a legal background. I mean, I myself have got legal qualifications, and for a Prime Minister who was head of the DPP, amongst other things, to have, one, mentioned a sub judice case and told off by the Speaker of the House after PMQs last week, for somebody who doesn't seem to understand the nature of ITLOS and the non-binding regulations and determinants passed by the ICJ and everything else, for a Prime Minister who every single time he's caught out is, people lied to me or I didn't know what was going on, and a lack of accountability. And now here, probably the worst of all, the suggestion that the legal advice change, and again, Mr. Kinnock said this, well, unless our constitution changed, Nick, and I don't recall that happening any time in the last 800-odd years in that regard, in what he's talking about, the idea that the legal advice change probably was on the basis of which they were trying to push it forward. Now, it's difficult to surmise too much without, everything being in the public domain. But the fact remains that and this is the real sticking point here, Nick. Look how late they did this, and for those who don't know, have a look at how late the government interjected in the Epping judgment. They were right to do so, by the way, but that was also done within a week. Again, they must understand legal process. Again, a guy who's a qualified barrister who is telling us all sorts of wonderful things he did under the DPP must understand due process. If he doesn't, I'm afraid it's a little bit untoward for him to turn around and say, well, we've got the first female chancellor or a cabinet which has gone to state school, because he can't seem to do his job. And if he can't do his job, Nick, neither can anybody else underneath him, because he's the man supposedly calling the shots.
Well, you can't argue that. That was brilliant. I'm not surprised you've got a legal background. Brilliantly and cogently argued. Pavan, thank you. Charles in Bagshot's been hanging on for some time. Charles, thank you. Your view on this. Good morning.
Hi, thanks for taking my call. Yeah, it is an affront to democracy, but I would have been interesting to ask your previous reform guest, was that Mr. Yusuf, I think?
Zia Yusuf, yes, head of policy.
Yeah. It would have been interesting to ask him his views on all of these ex-Tory MPs and sitting councillors that are jumping to reform with no by-election.
That's interesting. Yeah, that's a good point.
The population's not the same, but surely every vote counts. You can't have some people having democracy, but not others.
No, that's good. That's a very good point. And next time I speak with a senior member of Reform, it is a point worth putting. Do you think it stinks, Charles?
Oh, it does. And look, I don't care if it's 6 months they're going to be in office or 1 year. People have a right to have their say. Yep. Now, I hate reform. I can't stand. They'll probably do really well, but
just out of interest, why? I mean, gosh, that is a strong word. Why do you hate reform?
They're just their politics, to be honest. I agree with.
You say. I mean, a lot of people say they're very divisive.
Very divisive. Okay. I don't like. Yeah.
Okay.
But it just stinks because, I mean, even our local Liberal Democrat MP, which I'm a Lib Dem,
right.
I asked him, would you ever join reform? And he did say no, but he did actually praise reform for actually pushing this issue. So on that, we all agree. So Lib Dems are even agreeing with them on this.
Yours is a really good point, and I will make a mental note, and I will ask about those constituencies where the MP can just decide that she has decided to join reform. Just lastly, if we look at this one, and you seem a fairly balanced bloke, and you obviously have an interest in politics, and that you work for the Lib Dems, how humiliating...
I don't work for them. I'm a Lib Dem voter.
Oh, you Lib Dem. I'm sorry. I thought you worked for the local MP. No, I'm sorry. My apologies. In the list of U-turns, how embarrassing is this particular one as regards local democracy?
Look, they've got to get rid of Starmer. This is it. He can't stay on this. It's just ridiculous. You can't... He's nice bloke, but he's not strong.
I know this sounds weird. He's not a good politician. I know he's the Prime Minister, but he's not.
No, he's not. I mean, you don't have to be... I mean, you can be a moderate, quite boring politician, but be quite effective. I mean, Eisenhower was a boring politician, you could have said, in the 60s and 50s in America, but he was quite effective. You know, you don't have to have charisma, but it's just he just has no
he doesn't.
Leadership. He has no... he can't make decisions.
Enjoyed our conversation, Charles. Thank you. Ted Kitchingham has sent in, you right-wing journalists are the worst. So Labour council elections, there follows an uproar in the press, on the radio and TV. The government changes its mind, and guess what? There's another uproar. Instead of criticising the government due to changing its mind, you should be crowing about how great you and your right-wing colleagues are and patting yourselves on the back. I do question why the government didn't take legal advice about cancelling elections. Well, Mr Kitchingham, you seem... I'm quite happy for you to go after it. It doesn't bother me in the slightest, but... your last point actually underscores it. Why didn't this supposedly forensically skilled barrister, perhaps he was a barista, perhaps he made the coffee, maybe he's not a barrister, he's a barista, the supposedly forensically skilled barrister didn't take legal advice? I think, Mr Kitchingham, you've made the point, but thank you. Andy, again, council elections. Is this the most humiliating of the U-turns?
Well, with respect, Nick, he's running out of excuses now. Who else is he going to blame? Who did he get?
Well, it's the lawyers this time. This is the lawyers.
Right, well, so is he going to sack the lawyers now because they've now changed their advice? Now, we're paying for all this.
Yep.
And it's just a joke. He's always blaming somebody. Now, the lawyers don't change their sort of advice within 3 months. They've only changed their advice because somebody stood up to it. You know, Nigel Farage has sort of questioned it, and they've suddenly now backtracked again. What a joke. Absolute ridiculous. Why don't they get it right? Why don't they do it properly and stick to what they say?
Because, unfortunately, it would appear in most areas they're incompetent, and in some areas they take decisions that are illegal. Lastly, Andy, it's as plain and simple as that.
I think you're 100% correct.
All right, buddy. Look after yourself up there in beautiful Stratford-upon-Avon. We'll talk again soon.